All right, folks, we are starting our Generation Ziegler How Do You Connect with Youth to Positively Impact Them webinar. This is a webinar. This is an online workshop series that we're going to try to give you some of the fundamentals that we know about how to connect with youth and to let you know a little bit about what's going on. So as you log on, if you'll just tell us where you're from, we'll see some more folks from New Mexico and Utah piping in there. So, Matt, how's it going out your way? Tell us what you've been up to.
It's going great. So I am actually on the west side of Texas for those of you listening in. We farm and ranch, and so I've been on a combine today doing getting harvest for 2018 rolling. At the same time, which is one of the things we love to tell people, one of the connections that James and I have. Both of us have some agricultural background. It's kind of how we kicked it off together. So we've been kicking off Harvest 2018, which has been slow to get started, but we're glad to do it today. Most importantly, we're thrilled. I am thrilled and honored to have all of you on here and or listening to the recording. So James, what about you? How's your day?
My day's doing really well. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. We're having just a beautiful day. I have about 60, the sun bright and shiny after a full week last week of nothing but rain. And we're looking forward to going into the Thanksgiving weekend. And we're excited that all of you are here. We're excited that you've taken time out of your evening to listen to us. And if you're listening on the recording, that you've taken time to listen to it on the recording. We hope that we bring you a lot of value on what we're doing here at Generation Ziegler, some of the research that we've done, some of the work that we have done as well with it. So, title of our workshop this session is How to Connect with Youth to Positively Impact Them. And we're going to have a 3 series. We hope that you can attend these live, but if you cannot, there'll be an opportunity for you to engage with us both through social media and emailing and getting the recordings and everything else that goes along with that. So, Matt, anything that you want to tell them about how we came to this topic?
Yeah, gladly. One of the things that we have been passionate about is, James and I both have said, if we want to positively impact the world, then number one, we want to. And I think if you are on here or you're listening to this, you're in that boat, that you want to have a positive impact on the world. You want to make a difference. And that's where we started from. And as we began to look at that, and as we began to investigate that, like, how do we do that? And how do we do it in a way that makes a significant, lasting difference? And the one way that we know that we can do that and make that difference is if we start trying to make a difference in the lives of young people. And we say we don't want much. We just want to start a positive revolution in the world. Mm-hmm. And the best way we can do that is we can start with young people and we can start with youth, because we'll be the first to tell you that we think this young generation takes a bad rap. Because every young generation gets bashed by the older generation. That's been going on since the beginning of time. But this generation of young people coming up, even the millennials and the Gen Zers, man, they've got such a passion and such a desire to really find a way to fit and connect and make a difference in the world. And we are passionate about it, and we're thrilled that you guys are passionate about it as well. And thank you for being here with us.
We feel like that each one that are on here has some kind of calling or passion to help you. It is something that you feel passionately about. It's something that you may have done in some capacity or another, whether it's through education or through ministry or through your community or any kind of group associated with. We know that you have had a calling to work with youth. And I know that you feel that. I felt that from a very early age of coming out of high school. I knew that I wanted to give back to youth. I was a lot like you. I wanted to help youth along because someone had that passion and that calling and reached down and helped me up when I needed the help. And so since they did that to me, I in turn wanted to do that with you. And I know it's the same way with you, Matt.
Absolutely. And one of the statistics that I just saw the other day was the difference that was made in a troubled youth's life. So if you had a young person who had really been abused and neglected, the difference between whether they were successful or unsuccessful in life came down to a teacher. It came
Mm.
down to how one person treated them or invested in them or told them that they did make a difference and they did matter, regardless of their experience, regardless of the things in their past. It came down to a teacher was the difference between the successful kids of abuse and the non-successful kids of abuse. So if that's the case in those kids that are abused, then what difference could we make in any kid's life that we come in contact with? I mean, this is a passion, it is a calling, and we want to help people take up the mantle and run with it.
So if any of you guys want to chime in anytime there during the webinar tonight, the workshop tonight, and ask a question, ask for clarification on what we're saying, feel free to look at it. You can either write that question to the entire group or just to the panelists, to Matt and I, and we will address that question with the best that we can. But right now, a question I would ask you is, where do you feel a calling to work with youth? Is it in a church setting? Is it in a school setting? Is it in community setting? Why are you here? If some of you guys can answer that as we go through it, we'll chime in and try to address those issues as well. Most of you understand that there is a crisis with youth, that too many of them are viewing life as hopeless. Not a day goes by that we don't see something in your local community or in your news where you can see some of the problems and issues that youth are dealing with, some of the crisis that they're going through. And it is getting to be almost redundant that you hear this information over and over again. And there are so many people who want to help, but they just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, yeah.
And the reason that most people don't know what to do is because there's a major block. There's a major roadblock in front of us, and we don't know how. We don't know how to take the next step. And sometimes when we're dealing with different generations, that's a problem. But when it comes to youth, we just feel like that there may even be a gap between us and them, and we don't get it. And if we can just get one, I mean, it would be so sensational, and it would change the life of that just that one person. What we would then be doing would be completely worthwhile.
Well, I like the comments that we got coming in. Some folks are telling us that they were working with youth ministry. So if you're working in a youth ministry aspect, you do see this crisis that is coming through. Definitely, that is a place that people are able to feel comfortable enough to share some of the issues that they're going through. And they also went into professional mentoring and life coaching. And so I feel you there that you really are feeling this calling to work with youth. And we have to,
and then Mary, for Pete's sake, Mary, I mean, working in abstinence-based education, talk about a crisis, and talk about that it really does that, where it comes down to a self issue of how does a young person see themselves to be able to tap into that abstinence-based belief and reality that this is a better way to live. So we applaud you for doing what you're doing, and we hope that we give you some things that you could actually use that will help you carry your missions forward.
Well, the problems and the issues that they are facing today, what are some of those issues? What are some of those problems that our youth are facing today? So if some of you could chime in as Matt and I relate some of the issues and problems that we have talked about, if you guys could chime in as well. We have spent the last 3.5 years interviewing almost 750 youth between mid-teens to mid-20s. So it's a combination of teenagers and young adults. And we've asked them the question that we're asking you. What are some of the issues and problems facing youth today? And we've heard a variety of answers. We've heard social media. We've heard parent expectations. We've heard all types of different issues that have come through there, but they all seem to fall into one of three major categories. And those categories are?
They fall into the category of a self-image. How they see themselves is incredibly poor. The second one is relationships. Quite frankly, especially in a technology-driven age, relationships is a huge struggle. And the third issue is goals and focus. I mean, even if they know what they want to achieve in life, which is becoming a rarity, knowing how to do it is it's not there. So really, it comes down to self-image, relationships, and goals are three issues that really every problem that young people are faced with fall into.
There were a few outliners, but these issues and problems of self-image, relationships, and goals can manifest itself in the ways of depression for youth. Youth now are facing higher levels of depression than they've ever felt before. When I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer, and so I was obviously a child of the late 80s and a young adult in the early 90s. Depression, anxiety, loneliness, stress, those were not issues that were really that prevalent. There were people that were having those because we still had a problem with teen suicide and even in our area, but it was not to the level that it is today.
No.
And I was listening to a podcast today from our friends over at Growing Leaders, and he was even talking about how the levels of teen suicide is on the rise again. And it's because of those issues of self-image, of relationships, and goals. And it manifests themselves in those areas. So,
yeah, and
Danielle, the comments that people are chiming in on?
Yeah, I mean, like Danielle, what you're saying about being teens being pulled in so many different directions and different voices through the different mediums, it's, they're dealing with something that we've never seen before. And this was something that really hit home to me was, when we were kids, if we weren't invited to a party on a Friday night or a Saturday night with our friends, we didn't know about it till we got to school the next week. But today, everything happens in real time. And that never dawned on me that the different mediums that kids are being inundated with, life is happening at such real time. And if it can lead to an increased amount of depression, anxiety, and loneliness and stress strictly because of those different mediums, exactly like you say. And really, they all come down to one of three reasons of why it is such a critical issue, and that is their self-image or their relationship with others or their goals and focus. So we get that, and we know that we've probably all even dealt with these issues in our past, but not to the extent it feels like it's happening now. And certainly no one's ever offered any real solutions to these problems. So that's what we hope to accomplish.
I'm reading a little bit more here. Teens, as Daniel talks about, teens seem to be expected to know where they're going and what they're supposed to be doing before they leave high school. Isn't that the truth? I have a child who is a senior. I mean, there's a freshman. Oh, gosh, I still think she's in high school. A freshman in college, and it was so amazing that everybody, there were so many parents of seniors that expected their children not only to know what school they were going to go to, but they were going to know what their career was going to be. Now, I changed my major twice. Well, once. I guess I had two different majors in college, and what I went in for was not the occupation that I left with. And I think that there is a lot of pressure placed on that, and we want to address that as well on how do you do that in a proper manner and stuff. Yeah.
So, and part of that is what we're here for, is what is that next step, and why haven't we been able to get there? And we say it's because there's such a huge roadblock between those of us who want to help, those of us who want to make a difference in these young people's lives. There's this huge roadblock, and it really, that in and of itself can be boiled down into three main reasons, right, James?
Yeah, a lot of folks want to work with youth, but they don't. It's not their career. There are some folks that are called to do this as their life, but most people are called to do this alongside of their vocation, what they're doing as a job. And how do I make that work? How do I have a family? And how do I have a job and still be able to invest in the youth of the day? So they don't know how to make that work. Some don't know what curriculum they should have to teach. What do I talk to youth about? What do I need to address with them? How do I need to work with this? And then lastly is those who do maybe have an idea of how to speak to them and have the confidence to speak to them. They want to know, how do I get an opportunity, a platform to which to speak on? And those are the major obstacles that we want to come. So during our webinar series, what we want to do, our workshop series, is address three major areas with you. The first one being the content, and that's what we're going to address tonight. What, based on the research that we've done, the interviews we've done, and the material that we've had from experts that we've interviewed over the past 3 years, is the things that you need to be addressing with Going With Youth. Now, this is, and we'll say this many times, this is not an all-inclusive list. This is
Right.
just what we have felt from the research we have done and experience we have done are 3 major topics that you did. And we've already addressed them, but we're going to go into them in a little bit more detail tonight. Then we're going to talk about the confidence aspect of it. How do you present to them? The confidence that we're talking about is how do you develop the skills in yourself that you can go and speak to youth, whether it be from a platform, in an address, or facilitating a workshop, or even just coaching one-on-one. You have to develop a certain amount of skills, and we want to address that as well. And then the last bit of it is credibility. How do you earn the right to go in there and speak to people who do not know you? How do you get them to trust you to do that? And so those are the 3 things that we're going to discuss over the course of this series. The first night, we're going to talk about content. The second night, we're going to look at confidence and credibility some. The third night, we'll do a wrap-up on confidence and credibility. It's hard to pull those 2 apart, so we're going to try to tackle them together. And we'll have some question and answers on that. And you'll have access to all this through recordings and a copy of the slideshow as well. And there'll be some handouts that we've created too that we'll be sending you as well. Matt, anything?
So our goal with this series is really, we want to be able to reach more people like yourselves who are actively engaged in making a difference. And we want, in these 3 sessions, we want to encourage you to stick with us through all 3. There have been so many of you who have responded to our initial survey and given us some great feedback as to what you actually need. We are attentive to that, and we want you to know that throughout these 3 night sessions, that we will address your specific issues and concerns. So if we don't get to it tonight, please hang with us and make sure you're back again on number 2 and number 3, so that we can address your concerns and help you have the credentials and the credibility and the confidence to be able to go forward.
What do youth need to hear? Well, the 3 areas that everything can be defined into is self-image, relationships, and goals. Those are the major 3 issues that we feel that you should be concentrating on. Now, we're going to say this now, and we'll say this again in the confidence and the credibility area. You need to really concentrate on the one that speaks to you. You need to hear all these areas. They need help from all these areas, but you really can't be masters of all of them in a short amount of time. You really need to focus on what speaks to you the most. And that's what tonight is. We're going to kind of open back the curtain a little bit and show what some of the research is on this. Now, self-image, relationships, and goals are the 3 that we're going to work on tonight. Ironically, well, not ironically, Mr. Zig Ziglar, almost 50 years ago, developed his steps to success based on what he felt adults were needing in their life in order to be successful. And 50 years ago, the 3 steps to success that he identified were self-image, relationships, and goals. Those were the first 3 steps. And when our research came in and our interviews came in and we saw that, we realized so much has changed in the way those problems are being manifest themselves now, but they're not any different. They're just the way they're presented themselves are different. People are still encountering the same problems. So let's look at the first one, self-image. Why is it important?
Well, we wanted to give you some actual factual data. So according to a 2013 survey by the American Psychological Association, 58% of teen girls and 55% of teen boys in the U.S. reported that some aspect of their appearance is a somewhat or very significant source of stress. I'm sure those numbers are just as shocking for anywhere in the world. Also, recent data from Mintel confirms that the extent to which teens and tweens, those in their years approaching the teen years, are concerned about their appearance. It was found, get this, that 90% of girls and 80% of boys ages 9 through 17 are using some type of beauty product already.
Wow.
I could not believe that 90% and 80% of boys, 90% of girls, 80% of boys are already trying to make themselves look different or better or whatever. They're not satisfied with how they are naturally at that young age, so they're trying to do that. The reality is the struggle with self-image is it's stealing the youth from kids, and we've got to do something about it. I mean, other people, other circumstances, obviously, those are the things that don't determine our future. But it feels like this generation now has gotten so wrapped up in that personal appearance and in that self-image that it's crippling them. And we have those stats and data points to prove it.
Wow. That's amazing, especially the high number that are using beauty products already. And we should do that.
I mean, when I was 9 years old, I think I was still picking my nose for Pete's sake. and now they're dealing with trying to change the way they look at that age.
Wow. Well, self-image obviously is a huge problem, and it is the foundational problem. Here's the deal with self-image. If that is not correct, Mr. Ziegler had a quote a long time ago that said that you cannot consistently perform in a manner that is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. So if you see yourself poorly, the things that you do are going to be poorly. If you see yourself as always being a loser, how can you accomplish anything? How can you have effective relationships if you see yourself in a negative manner? So self-image is amazingly important about what it needs to do. So what are some of the issues? We don't have time to go dive deep into this, and we can do that with those who want to. We'll do some time with question answering afterwards. But what do they need to know about self-image of this? Well, the very first thing is how to identify what a bad self-image is. Mm-hmm. What shocks me is that they don't really understand what a bad self-image looks like, or how that they're viewing themselves in a bad way. What are some of the physical signs? Now, not only do they need to be able to recognize it themselves, but as parents, as teachers, as mentors of those, we need to understand what those signs are so we can help others as well. Matt, thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, and then, how once we can get them to identify what a bad self-image is, because you don't know what you don't know. And these kids may be in such a rut that or in such a valley that they just can't see it. So when we can identify it, then we can start showing what the negative results of it are and how this can spiral into so many other facets of your life. So the number two thing is then what are those negative results from that self-image?
And they need to understand that as a result of having a self-image that is not positive, that is not built on a solid foundation, that does not have some of the elements that are needed for them to be successful, these other things in life are just going to fall apart as well. We do a lot with we do a certification program with a high level of young people that are some of the best in the nation who have felt a call and desire to work with youth, and they are committing their lives to do this, whether it is through school organizations, college organizations, professional organizations, or ministry. They are feeling a calling in this. And some of them have already made career choices based on the fact that they are certified trainers through us and want to do this. And yet when they come through our program, every single class we've had, every one of them will honestly say, I have struggled with self-image as well. That we all do that. The most elite person has struggled with it in some ways. And so we need to understand how to identify the problems that we have on these. What are some of the consequences if we don't deal with it, and be able to teach that to youth in a positive way.
Yeah, and what we want you to take away from this first step here in self-image, and like James already said, this may not be the hot button for you to talk about with young people or your fellow, if you're a mentor, your fellow friends and family members. But we want you to understand the magnitude of self-image and the crisis that these young adults are dealing with self-image, so that as you leave tonight and you start your day tomorrow, we want you, as you interact with young people, to understand that this is a huge issue with almost every young person that you meet. And in so doing, if we can just acknowledge that, if we can just recognize that fact, then we can start to help them see themselves as we see them, and as you see them, and as the good Lord up above sees them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why we start with self-image, and why we're starting with this is because we want you to start tomorrow recognizing the struggle that these kids are dealing with and be able to start helping them deal with it.
Yeah, one of the questions that, for those of you who filled out the survey that we sent out earlier, if you had registered in time for that survey, one of the questions that someone wanted us to tackle was, how do I deal with hopelessness and depression in youth? And one of the things that we learned when we were talking with some of people who are child psychologists, youth psychologists, and are really studying and working with this, is they say if we've not tackled the area of self-image and how they view themselves, and we just try to treat things like depression and like this hopelessness, we're just dealing with a symptom. We're not dealing with the core sickness here. We're not dealing with the cause. And we may be able to give them some tools that are going to help them overcome a depressed area at time, but it could very well reoccur again and even be greater the second time because that foundation has not been laid. Now, please understand, there is no easy, quick fix with this. Even someone who knows they are a child of God, who knows that they have been created by them, who understands that they have the power to be positive in their life and have a self-image, is going to struggle still in life. We all do. The entire planet, everybody does. Everybody struggles with this. But what we want to do is we want to teach them some steps that they can use to help build that foundation. And that's the last thing, is teaching them some of the steps to build a healthy self-image.
Yeah, and Mr. Ziegler, one of my favorite quotes from Mr. Ziegler was, he said, of course motivation doesn't last, but neither does bathing, and we recommend you do that often. And the point being, we're going to have to constantly reinforce not only the young adults that we deal with, but also ourselves, that we are capable. And the other quote he had, you are endowed, he said you were designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness. When we can see that in ourselves, then we can start sharing that kind of hope with other people. So we want you to see it in you, and we want you to see how amazing we think you are. And if we can do that, then we can hopefully inspire you and encourage you to help other people see how great they are and how to identify their bad self-image and see the results of it, and then be able to take the steps necessary to gain that positive, healthy self-image that every one of us so desires and so deserves to have.
And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to send all of you who have registered for this webinar, we're going to send you a PDF that you can download that has 5 steps to helping you create a healthy self-image. And those things are like making a victory list, taking your inventory, listening to positive influences, choosing your friends wisely, and I cannot think of the 5th one right now. Do you remember? I'm missing the 5th. Oh gosh, that's embarrassing. But those are 4 of the 5, and those are great. Mr. Ziegler, in his book "See You at the Top," which was written almost 40 years ago, lists 15. We took those 15 and talked to youth about them, talked to some of our staff, and talked to trainers, and went through focus groups and narrowed it down to 5 that we felt like would be very effective. Making the victory list, choosing your friends wisely, listen to positive influences, all those types of things of going forward on this. So we're going to give you that. You'll have that aspect going forward. You guys have any questions at all about self-image, just type it in and we'll address it. Matt, anything to wrap up on self-image before we go to
Nope. The only thing I'll say in closing on the self-image piece is one of the things that I say in every seminar and every talk I give, and that is the greatest enemy that you will ever face is the one that lives between your ears. The day you can deal with this space right here and tackle this is the day that everything's going to change exponentially for you and the people that you work with.
Relationships is the next one. It's no less crucial than self-image as far as the way it affects them and the problems that they have. But you really can't have effective relationships if you don't view yourself well. You cannot learn to love someone if you don't love yourself. I mean, it even says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, if you're viewing yourself in a negative way and you hate yourself, then how in the world can you show any kind of compassion and any kind of feelings towards others? So it's a fundamental existence that we have to start with self-image, but relationships is a huge problem. Now, if you guys could type in some of the problems that you've seen in relationships, we'll talk about those as we go through this topic. But the major two problems, or why this is important, is that relationships, if we let them explode, can end up into bullying and into having hard problems with peer pressure.
Yeah. And as we begin to investigate these steps, here's a couple of things that I pulled up that I want to share with you. And get this, due to the technology culture, Generation Z, they have little knowledge of how to build relationships or communicate offline. According to Inc. magazine, Gen Z grew up with 4 to 5 screens, mobile, TV, laptop, tablet, or gaming device, on a daily basis. 4 to 5 screens on a daily basis. And it is forecasted that by 20.4 billion connected things will be used worldwide in 2020. And eventually Gen Z will live in a world with 1 trillion interconnected devices that will forever reshape how they live, how they work, and how they play. That's Inc. magazine. Then in May 25th of last year, an article by marketing expert Brendan Gale, he published what we've all experienced and know to be true. Gen Z has spent their formative years staring at a device and have very little communication skills. They're not interested in physical meeting or the development of sustained relationships. They see no real reason to step out of their homes, and they're not interested in living in or by any social norms. Okay, we know that that's all true. We know that the device thing is eating up young people's lives. We know that it's only going to get bigger and it's only going to get more. So for any of us, relationships can be a crazy difficult thing, and they can require a great deal amount of work or skills. I mean, for any of you who are married, you will know that this is true, right? But any of us dealing with relationships know that it takes a lot of work, and it's a very difficult thing, and a lot of it is actually a learned skill. And now we're seeing a generation that didn't grow up like those of us who are older before screen times. And we're going to have to help them bridge that gap to be able to make those connections. And that's why it is so important.
I like what Daniel just sent to us as panelists. He said more often than not, teens struggle to go deep in their relationships. And I interpret that to mean to having real relationships, to having real friendships. There's plenty of quantity out there, but there's very little depth. We have which I think is a great point, Daniel. One of our friends, a man named Bob Bodine, talks about that due to social media, you now can have 2,000 friends, but you have no real depth of friends. There's no one that you really connect with. You're just superficial in your relationships that go on, going on. I was working with some youth at my local church recently, and this one girl that I was talking to, I was asking her about her relationship with this guy that she was dating with. She was a senior, and are you and him still dating? And she says, well, I'm not sure if we are or not. And I said, what do you mean you're not sure? She says, well, he's just ghosting me. I mean, he's just stopped communicating with you, and because of tablets and phones and the ability to communicate in that way, they had not had face-to-face relationships or even voice-to-voice relationships. They're doing it totally through instant messaging, through apps, or even text. Text is not even their preferred way. It's probably through Snapchat that they're using. And so he was ghosting her, so she had no idea how to. So when they need desperate help on these, they need desperate help, because if they don't know how to do these relationships, it's going to really work into bullying. And some of the areas that they need help in building relationships are these 3 major areas here. They need help working with their parents. How do I relate to my parents? how do I connect with parents? And parents need help on relating to them, not speaking to them, but speaking at them, but speaking to them. Most parents are speaking at them. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Because they don't understand the age that they're living in, and they have grown up with a technology that is different. I told my children last night, and they thought this was funny. My cell phone, I have the ringer on it to be an old-timey ringer, just as a fun thing. So the phone rings, and they ask me why I do that. I said, because it reminds me of the phone that I would rush to get when I was a teenager because I thought somebody was calling me. And so they said, well, did you have a phone in your room? And I was like, are you kidding? My father would have never let me have a phone in my room. Are you crazy? They said, well, how did you talk to people without folks knowing this? And I was like, well, we had a 7-foot or 8-foot cord on the phone, and I would go and sit in the closet and talk to somebody in there. And that was the privacy. And even then, my parents could listen in and know what was going on in my life, or at least have some idea of what was happening. They knew who my friends were. But now, as a parent, I know this, it is so difficult for us to know what our teens are doing. They can have a whole life that is isolated completely from us. And if we're not very conscious of that, do it. So when you're working with youth, and dealing with relationships, we have to be able to help them, those who are working with them, help them understand how to connect with you so they can earn their trust enough to become part of that world of them. And with youth to understand that there is danger in having all of their relationships in silos that are isolated from people.
That's a fact. And we all understand how important relationships are, especially when it comes to future success. I mean, we all know that if you are going to be a successful person in life, it's going to be dependent upon your relationship with your friends, with your coworkers, with an employer, with your parents, with whoever your parental units are. We all know that your level of success is going to depend upon how you can build those relationships. So for us as leaders, as youth workers, as youth advisors and counselors, we've got to take the step to help young people see the critical importance of being able to make those connections with other people outside of a device and be able to base those relationships on some real solid foundation principles, which we all know are trust and hope and encouragement and these great things that we all probably had. So let's start offering that to these young people so that we can try to help encourage them to build those relationships. Because if we can build winning relationships, then we can take a huge step forward to success, not only as leaders, but as the young people who are emerging into adulthood.
And the question has been asked, how do we teach teens to have good conversations with other people? That's going to be a difficult one, which relates right here with friends and with teachers. How do we get them to be open and honest and share what they need to at that level of development that they are? We don't need to push too much in-depth sharing on them too early in life, because that can open up a whole other set of problems that psychologists are beginning to see, that in some senses we've had, too much openness, that they've shared too much of their feelings when they don't really know how to handle those. But a lot of it is going to come back to that first issue of self-image, developing that and having them to have the confidence in themselves to be able to share with others, and working with teachers and mentors. Matt, anything else on this before we move?
Yeah. When it comes to dealing with other people and when it comes to building relationships, obviously that communication piece is so different now. So number one, the first thing that I had to do as Uncle Matt, of a niece and 3 nephews, I had to learn to communicate their way first, right? I had to get over myself to realize it's not about me, it's about them and where I want to try to help them. So I started communicating on the platforms that they're on. So we started doing I started texting real early on. As soon as they started, I saw that was the trend. And then we started Facebooking, and then we started Instagramming, and I moved with them. At the same time, that's building such a trust level that then I can say, okay, let's put this let's put a device down and let's have a real conversation. And then I have a preset number of questions that I can ask them that can get a communication started. So it's about getting over yourself and realizing it's not about the way that we want to communicate to others, but it's about how we can attach to them first and then start leading them into some communication realms that they may not be comfortable or familiar with. But hey, it's getting over ourselves to get there.
Let's move on to the next one. I know we can do this. Goals. Why is this important?
Hugely important. And research has showed some data points. It has shown that 72% of Generation Z high school students want to start their own business. Okay, I was shocked by that statistic, but this one was out of the Huffington Post. 72% of Gen Z high school students want to start their own business. Wow. They are highly motivated and they're willing to work hard for their dreams. However, Bruce Tolgan, he said this: they expect you to greet them warmly, make them feel comfortable, set them up for success, provide them with the resources they need, help avoid pitfalls, and give them lots of encouragement. I thought, yeah, that's spot on. So the question then becomes, how can we match up their desire for independence with the things that they want to accomplish in life and with the support system that they need? Because this generation they're called the trophy generation, right? Everybody got an award. Everybody got a trophy. And they're taking a great amount of flack for that. My question to you is, whose fault was that? It wasn't theirs. It's the adults in the room that were giving them the trophies and giving them the awards and putting everybody on the same "you can do it" list. Okay, that's great. That was our fault. Understand that. Now, how can we provide that platform of success to actually help them find a goal, find something that they want to achieve, and then be able to move towards that? So being able to bring these things together is going to be critically important to help solve the problem.
What we've realized too, I'm dealing with youth and goals, is that the very first problem we've realized is that many youth do not even realize that they can dream to be beyond what is their existing circumstances. I grew up in an organization that I was involved with in high school that taught goal setting, dreaming and goal setting at a very early age. So I came of age as a ninth grader realizing that I needed to have a goal in life, that I needed to accomplish something in life, that it needed to be my responsibility, not something that was placed upon me by a parent or a mentor or a teacher, that it had to be my responsibility. And so I was encouraged to think beyond my current situation to what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to have, what I wanted to give to this world, and dream on that. And then I was taught to take that dream and turn it into a goal, and then take that goal and turn it into a plan, so I could be, do, and have, and give all that I could do and want to be a part of in this life. What our research is showing is that there's youth out there that don't even realize they can dream, they can be beyond what they want to be, and that is a significant problem, I believe.
Yeah, and you know what? We're all products of our environment, and this young generation is a product of theirs. And quite frankly, maybe some of us as adults haven't pushed ourselves enough to accomplish the things that we are capable of accomplishing, and showing that example to the young people around us. And also maybe it's just the fact that unless we can help them design those definite, precise, and clearly set goals, then it's just, we exist in this wandering generality. And I say, you know what? We as a society worldwide have become perfectly content to be generalities and wander through life. And you know what? If you aim at nothing, you're going to miss it every time. And we've been told that our whole lives. But what have we done about it? So with this young generation, let's help them do something about it. Because once the numbers, the stats prove it, this generation wants to accomplish more. They want to be independent. They want to do more, be more, and have more. And when we can attach to them emotionally, then they'll give more than we could ever even begin to comprehend. But we're going to have to help them facilitate that, which is why this is one of the first 3 steps that we said are the most important things that we can start doing when we're identifying young people's problems, and how we can help be a foundation for them to grow from.
And when you're teaching them the goal setting, a lot of you are going to ask, well, what do I need to do? Well, there are many different methods of goal setting that are out there. There is the SMART goal method of setting. There is Brian Tracy has a method of goal setting. There's several different organizations that have their own way of formulating goals. We happen to think what Mr. Ziegler came up with, his 7 steps, is one of the best, and we can share that with you. We have a PDF we can send to you as well along with that. It was kind of geared towards a different age group, but we'll pass that along to you as well. But they need to have an understanding of, how do I get from point A to point B? I'm very linear in my thinking, very mathematical in my thinking. And so when you give me a formula, A plus B equals C, I understand that. So that's why goals to me was a very easy thing to understand. That may not be the method for others. Some may be a little bit more abstract in the way you need to present it. But they do need to understand that they need some kind of pathway to get from where they are now to where they want to be. Because if they don't know where they're going to go, how are they're going to get, what are they going to do? What are they going to do in life? So we have to make sure that we tie their dreams into something of a reality so that they can take those steps forward and do day-to-day things as going forward.
Yeah, and lastly, to put a bow on this 3rd step is, whether we like it or not, this is an instant gratification generation. And we're all falling into it because everything has become so instantaneous that when things don't happen that way, we all shut down, or we click off, or we do something else. So we're going to have to help facilitate the process that we all know is not instantaneous. We all know that life happens one day at a time, but it isn't all happening in one day. So how can we help do that? And how can we help them recognize the fact that this is a process, and it is going to take time? It isn't instant, but it can be started instantly.
So at this point in time, we've covered the major 3 issues that we feel the youth are struggling with. Goals really too is combination and a lack of focus in life. So those 3 issues, again, to recap: self-image, relationships, and goals. That was determined by the interviews that we did with almost 750 youth to young adults across the nation, and being able to share their ideas and learn from them what they felt like were some of the issues and problems. And these are just some of the avenues of this. Now, what we would advise you to do is to really find the one that speaks to you. Yeah. Because you're not going to go wrong on speaking on one of those 3 topics, or sharing one of those 3 topics, or coaching one of those 3 topics with any of you, because they all are struggling with some aspect of that. Even the most motivated person is struggling with goal setting, doing it effectively. Even the most well-rounded person, you think, they seem to be struggling somewhat with relationships and self-image. Find the one that speaks to you the most, research it, dive into it, make it a part of who you are, and then help present it to the youth that you want to work with. Matt?
No, and really, there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, it's about picking one and understanding that every young adult and kid that you come in contact with is going to be dealing with one of these 3 issues. Knowing that fact can help us connect, which is the whole point of the webinar series, is to help us connect with youth, right? So knowing that every young person that you come in contact with is dealing with one of these major issues is a huge hurdle clearing opportunity for us to connect on a really significant plane, in a really significant way, because it's personal. And when we can connect personally, then we can truly lead.
One of the things that we've noticed from people who want to connect with youth, and they may want to do it from a workshop or a platform standpoint or a teaching standpoint, what they try to do is come up with the new hot topic or the new hot subject and want to share that with them, to be on the cutting edge. And what they are missing is these fundamental issues that have been going on for years and years are still what the youth speak today. And Matt is so right in saying you cannot go wrong. You're going to touch them with this because they struggle with it. It's something they can identify with very, very, very clearly versus being, something a little bit more trendy, which might catch their attention and it might bring them in, but it might not help them in regards. So what questions do you guys have? Do you guys have any questions going forth that we can help answer here? If you'll just type them in as we're going forward before we kind of wrap up for the evening. Any questions at all that we've had? I think we've tried to answer a lot of them as they've come in as we've been sharing. Matt, any questions you have?
No, the only thing that I'll start to add in at this point is that we have been reading and listening to your response and your feedback, not just tonight, but in your surveys and in the emails that you've responded to us with. James and I get those personally, so we see those and we will begin to address the actual nuts and bolts as we can. But we know that this is a huge first step that we've got to take.
Here's a great question here is what time frames have you used in goal setting for teens? Examples quarterly, annually, 5 to 10 years. One of the things that we work with the people who come through our certification program is what is a 90-day goal, something that you can work on in the next 3 months. Now, the reason that we want to do that is we want to be able to hold them accountable for something 3 months later and also have something that they can see progress and traction on, and they can actually see how the process works. I would advise, and this is not a hard and fast rule, but I would advise trying to keep it down to that 90 as you're teaching it to begin with, because if it goes longer than that, they could lose interest. Now, if you're setting a goal out for a year, you obviously will have to have little steps in between that are benchmarks for them. But you're making it a little bit more complicated on the front end than it maybe needs to be. So let's set something for that 90-day, that 3-month period, something that they can accomplish. And, like for my children, their 90-day goal at the beginning of the year is just reaching a certain level on academics that they want to do. We're not hard and fast about, hey, you got to get all straight A's. That's the top end, reward. Obviously, that is, I don't think that has yet happened once they got out of like middle school, got in the higher level high school classes. That would happen. But being able to have that 90-day and then teaching them that not even if you reach that goal, it's not the reach that you measure, but it's the gain that you measure. So if our goal was to make all A's and we didn't get it, but we made 6 A's and 1 B, well, that's an amazing gain over what we may have had before. So we're trying to teach that on this.
Yeah, and the joy of the process that Mr. Ziegler laid out is that it'll work for anything. So if you have a small goal, it's going to work for that. If you have a short-term, medium, a long-term goal, the process is the same, which we think is really critical because we do want to build in those initial successes so that we can get some buy-in. And that goes with anything. That goes with the self-image, the relationships, and the goals. If we can start getting those short-term successes and those short-term steps forward, then we know we're getting closer to being able to walk. Then we can teach them how to run.
Any other questions before we move to the next one? Our next workshop is going to be the 27th, a week from tonight. We're really going to focus in on how to get them to listen and how to get the opportunity. So now that you've got the audience, or you understand what you want to share with them, you're ready to present. You've researched it. You're passionate about it. You know that this is an issue. You've talked to those who are working with them or their parents or their teachers or mentors, and hey, they really need to hear about what I can share with them on self-image. How do we get them to listen to us? Yeah. How do we get them to engage in what we're doing? How do we get that buy-in? And more importantly, how do we get the opportunity to do that outside of our immediate area of influence?
Yeah.
I want you guys to connect with us. Email us your questions at info@generationziegler.com, or you can respond to the emails that you've been getting. I think they'll come straight back to me as well. Connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at Generation Ziegler. We would love for you to follow us. We post 5 to 6 times a week. And a lot of times we're highlighting some of the trainers that have come through our program and what they're doing right now to help youth as well going forward on that. Matt, anything for you want to wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you very much for your time. We understand that is the most valuable asset that you have, and we truly appreciate you donating a part of it and investing some of yours with us. And we want you to know that it was an honor for us to be able to give you a piece of ours. So we look forward to having you on the next one. We would also encourage you to invite and help any other people get involved that would also be a great difference maker. So thank you so much.
One of the things that Matt just said that maybe Matt, when you get the recordings and the downloads, it's not proprietary. You're getting it first because you registered. But if you know someone who did not know about this and you think they would benefit from it, please forward it to them.
Yeah,
we would love to get this information as much as forward. We're going to stop the recording right now, and we'll stay online. And we'll open it up that if you want to ask us any questions and stuff, we'll turn your mic on and we'll just have a little chat time off the recording. So we're stopping the recording now, and we thank you guys. So if you need to go on and stuff, the webinar is officially ended.